Welcome back to Combo Compendium. Today we're going to be talking about Centurion, which is probably a deck that you've forgotten is coming out in just a few short weeks. It's a pretty scary deck, because one specific card is still legal in the game, to many people's dismay. But the main thing you need to know about Centurion is that it is a, 1.5 card combo deck, because every combo is going to require a discard. But in my opinion, 1.5 card combo is actually one card combo because you start the game with 5 cards in hand, but that's a topic for a different day. So the deck has a ton of starters, so there's many like 1 card combos that gets you up into your level 12 synchros. Now unfortunately, the level 12 synchro pool is not super fleshed out. So the deck really only does like one good play right now within its own engine. There are other splashable engines that you can throw into this deck because the engine is so compact and you can get the full thing just off of one card. So we're going to start off with our first starter, which is Primera. It's a level 4 spellcaster tuner. And while it's treated as a continuous trap, level 5 or higher Centurion monsters cannot be destroyed by card effects. Yeah, I forgot to mention this deck's whole gimmick is like putting things in the back row as continuous traps and then summoning them. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add a Centurion card from deck to hand. And then you can't special summon Centurion Primera for the rest of this turn. During the main phase, while it's treated as a continuous trap, you can special summon it. So pretty much every combo is going to require a discard, so you're going to see the cross out a lot. So we're going to summon out the Primera. Primera effect is going to grab our field spell, which is called Stand Up Centurion. So can't be destroyed by card effects while you control a Centurion monster, so that's very nice. During the main phase, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard. There's your discard. Place one Centurion monster from your deck face up in your spell trap zone as a continuous trap. And then if a monster is special summoned, you can quick synchro. And that's really nice because the deck doesn't swarm the field a lot during your turn. So you're going to be synchroing during your turn and your opponent's turn. So we're going to go ahead and activate the field spell, discard our random card to get the Trudea in the back row. Now Trudea has the same effect where if it's in the back row you can special summon it. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then we are going to use its on-field effect as a monster, which is you can place both this card you control and a Centurion monster from your hand or deck, except this card face up in your spell trap zone as a continuous trap, and you cannot special summon Trudea for the rest of the turn. So what we're going to do, we're going to return Trudea to the back row, and we're going to get Emit 6, also now in the back row, which again has the same effect to special summon, but this one is level 8. And it has a hand or graveyard effect, quick effect, that you can target a Centurion you control, put it in the back row, and then special this card. So we're going to go ahead and summon it out from the back row using its second effect. And now we have a level 4 tuner and a level 8 non-tuner on the field. So we get to make our Centurion Legatia, whatever you want to pronounce it. So this card has some pretty neat effects. It's also just massive, like 3,500. So monsters with 2,000 or less attack cannot be destroyed by battle. If this card is special summon, you can draw a card, then destroy one monster your opponent controls with the highest attack. So if you summon it during your opponent's turn, not only do you get the draw, but you also get to destroy a monster. So this is like a 1-card pop. And then during the end phase, you can place a non-synchro Centurion from your hand or graveyard in your back row. So that's like... So this is the typical main end board for this deck. And during the end phase, we're going to put the Primera back in the back row, because right now this is this deck's only tuner monster. So if you want to be doing synchro plays during your opponent's turn, you're going to need this in the back row, plus one of your non-tuners. So the end board isn't anything fantastic right now. We don't actually have any interruptions here. Just like straight up no interruptions. You do get to like draw cards with this deck, so playing hand traps in this deck is pretty nice because you're going to be drawing a lot of cards. We are going to be quick synchroing on our opponent's turn using the field spell, and you'll be able to see here in a minute what we're going into. So what we're going to do is, these effects can only be activated during the main phase. So, you know, your opponent goes to main phase, they get priority to do one action. So they do their one thing, like they summon a monster. Then we can go Trudea effect and Primera effect to special. And now that both of them are on the field, we can quick synchro using monsters by activating the field spell. I forgot to mention Trudea can become level 8 when it's summoned from the back row, which can be nice if you don't have the Emit 6, because it lets you still go into the level 12s. But there's a nice interaction we can do here, where we can go Chainlink 1 Primera, which of course will add any Centurion card, so we get even more follow-up in rotation. Chainlink 2 Stand Up in order to synchro summon. And then we're going to Chainlink 3 the Emit 6, because we want to put this Trudea in the back row, special summon out the Emit, and then we will still have enough material on board to make it 12, while also putting the Trudea in the back row as even more follow-up. So you can see right now how this deck just kind of, once you get everything in rotation, you know, you get the summons from the back row every turn, you get the summons from the graveyard every turn, you get the searches off of Primera every turn, drawing cards off of Legatia. So you can generate some pretty nice advantage pretty quickly over the course of a few turns. But here's the jump scare. We're going to be summoning Crimson Dragon, because it's like the only good level 12 play, right? And then on resolution, you know, make sure you do this as Chainlink 1, right? So after you summon Crimson Dragon, you know, you ask your opponent like, hey, do you have any quick effects that you want to activate on resolution? If they say no, then you can go, okay, Chainlink 1 Crimson Dragon, targeting Legatia, and it's going to tag out for King Calamity. And of course you all know what King Calamity does by now. If you don't know what it does, it says when it's synchro summoned, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects on the field. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this effect's activation. So basically it says your opponent just can't activate anything unless it's in hand or grave, but you know, there isn't any deck that just exclusively does that, right? So yeah, basically just turn skips your opponent, puts up a massive body, right? So they skip their turn, do whatever. During end phase, you get Legatia's effect again to put more cards in the back row. And at this point, you've generated so much advantage that you can just summon out basically everything and then attack for game. And yep, that's how you play Centurion. You just summon Calamity and then you win. Because that's this deck's only play right now. The first wave of support has way too many just like kind of random dud cards that don't contribute to this deck's game plan at all. So basically we're left with only just going for a Calamity lock. And the deck can do it very consistently in engine. So this is kind of the gist of what this deck does right now. It's pretty boring, but you know, Calamity just wins games, so why not do it if it's legal? Now, for our second one-card combo, we're going to be using Trudea as our normal summon this time. One thing to keep in mind about this card is that it is a Pyro, so that once Bonfire comes out in like, what is it, January or February, this deck's going to get a huge consistency boost, because you get to play tons of copies of Trudea, and Trudea is also a one-card starter for the deck. So we get to summon out our Trudea here. We're going to use its on-field effect to put it in the back row, as well as put Primera in the back row as well. Then we can special out Primera, use the effect on summon to search for our field spell. Use the field spell, discard a card, put our Emit 6 in the back row. Emit 6 special. Synchro into Legacia. This draws us a card. And then in phase, we put the Primera in the back row. And you can see from this position, this is the exact same position we were in last game. So we can just go for all of our effects here. Go for Crimson Dragon on Resolution, tag out into the Calamity, and that's all she wrote. that's the end of the game. And then, of course, you get all your follow-up, blah, 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 and then you OTK your opponent because you have a million cards to play with. So if you only open the field spell, you can still put up some interruptions, but you don't have really enough gas to go for the full Centurion Calamity lock. But you still can put up a nice little setup here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the field spell to put our Trudea in the back row. Trudea effect special, and then effect on field, put itself and Primera in the back row. Primera effect to special. We're going to grab Centurion Phalanx, which is a trap card that says target a face-up monster on the field, banish it, and if you do, special summon it to its owner's field during the standby phase. And you can banish this card from the graveyard, target a Centurion Synchro in your grave, special it, but it loses 1500. So it's an interruption, and also a little bit of follow-up. There is a Centurion spell card that lets you put Emit 6 into your back row, but it does not have Centurion in the name, so therefore it is not searchable off of Primera. I don't know why they've been doing that with these deck build sets recently. Like, they did it with Stake Your Soul. Now they're doing it with it's like Imblana of Oath or something. I don't know why they're doing that shit. It's stupid. It should have just been a Centurion card. What can you do? So, unfortunately, this is all the gas we have with only opening the field spell. You know, maybe we'll get some support in the future that can help a little bit. But for now, our only play, really, is to quick effect Synchro during our opponent's turn. We can go for a 12. You can also go for an 8 here. But going for the 12, I think, is a bit better. Because it can turn on, like, some other back row that you maybe have for Centurion. But Legacia is an interruption, right? Because when it's summoned, not only do you draw the card, but destroy the monster your opponent controls with the highest attack. So you get the Legacia to pop a card, and then if they keep playing, you know, you got the Phalanx to banish a monster on the field until the next standby phase. And since this was our only play, you're probably super bricked up in your hand right now, so you could probably have a bunch of hand traps and whatnot. So it's not the greatest ever, but at least it's not a completely unplayable hand, right? So now we're going to move on to an example of a 2-card combo. Of course, plus a discard, because, you know, if you're playing a deck that requires a discard, you gotta be willing to just throw a card away out of your hand, whether you like it or not. You know, if you don't like it, play a different deck. So 2-card combos in this deck, they're going to allow us to get a little bit more protection for our Calamity lock. So you'll see in a second here, we summon out the Primera, and since we already have the field spell, we can add something else. For example, our Truth Centurion, which is a counter trap that basically negates a spell trap or monster effect by sending a face-up card from our spell trap zone to the graveyard. So that's very nice. You know, having any Omni-Negate counter trap in a deck is pretty nice, especially when you're going for a turn skip combo during your opponent's turn. Alright, so we're going to go for the Centurion, stand up, discard our random card, put our Emit in the back row, summon out, make our level 12, which of course will draw us a card to help replenish our discards. And then we can set our trap card, end phase, Legacia effect, put our Primera in the back row. And then we can, once our opponent goes for a monster, we can go summon these out. Chainlink 1 Primera, 2 Centurion, 3 emit 6. Summon out our Crimson Dragon. And now we have the Crimson Dragon on field. And we also now have a monster in the back row, so that once we go for our Crimson Dragon effect to try to Calamity Lock, we have an Omni Negate counter trap that just like stops everything, right? Like your opponent has to Forbidden Droplet sending a trap card. I don't see that ever happening. I don't think any deck playing Droplet is going to have like a bunch of traps in their deck, right? Like they have to get really lucky and draw an Imperm. But yeah, basically we get to go for our full setup here and then go for the Calamity Lock while also having the trap card as protection. So now this combo is just like completely guaranteed, right? You're getting this guaranteed turn skip, and then you get all the follow-up in the world to OTK your opponent on the crackback. You know, having the 1-card combo is nice, but having these little 2-card combos just to guarantee that you win the game off of Calamity, it's pretty nice. Alright, now we're going to get into the section where we talk about the alternate engines you can play in this deck. The one you've probably seen the most if you've watched any gameplay of this deck online is Horus. Cards that just came out from Age of Overlord. The main reason you play Horus is that it's an engine that doesn't require your normal summon, and it can put up a lot of bodies on board for you to be able to put up some rank 8s, like maybe Photon Lord. If you don't have any engine in hand, you can go for Giant Trainer to try to draw cards. Also, if you play the Resonator package with Vision Resonator, you can go for things like Barone as well. But this is just going to be a quick example of how it works. You know, they're also just level 8 bodies, so that once you get Primera, once you get her into rotation, you can use your Horus cards and your Primera to just like go for your level 12 synchros. But the main thing is that I might have done things very out of order in this replay. But basically you want to use your Horus Engine to put up a Photon Lord and then go for your Centurion combo. I didn't do it correctly here. That is my bad. You know, but technically you can do it first or second, doesn't really matter. Probably do it first. But you can see here, this is just like all the same stuff again. Right? It's just the Calamity Lock, but you have Photon Lord on field, so that your opponent can't like hand trap you or anything during your turn, and then things like that. Yeah, how fun and interesting is that? Really, really interesting. So the Horus cards are pretty straightforward in what you're trying to do, right? Put up big bodies. If you're worried about hand traps, put up Photon Lord. If not, you can just leave them on the field, maybe go for Giant Trainer, draw a bunch of cards, you know. It's a very flexible engine in the deck. One thing that I've been messing around with that I finally found a home for is using the Diabellstar Sinful Spoils package, going for a Red Dragon Archfiend line. And I'm excited to show this off because I've been trying to find a home for it ever since I kind of, you know, put the combo together. And Centurion is a pretty nice one for it. So we're going to open with our starter, being Trudea. You know, once we get Bonfire, you'll have tons of this card in rotation in your deck. And the Seeker of Sinful Spoils. So we're going to go for our main line here, getting our Primera into rotation. And then we're going to go for our Seeker to add Diabellstar. Diabellstar is going to add Sinful Spoils. And one cool thing about Centurion is that they just put monsters in the back row, which is really nice fodder for our Sinful Spoils Snake Eye, because we can use it to send the Trudea to the grave, summon out our Jet Synchron. We can use Sinful Spoils effect in grave to draw a card, so this is going to give us even extra discard fodder. And we're going to go for Scarred Red Dragon Archfiend. And then once you get Jet Synchron engraved, we can use the effect, discarding the card that we just drew, or any other card, summon out the Jet Synchron, and we can synchro these two into our Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. Now this card doesn't really let you play around hand traps, unfortunately, but it lets you play around basically everything that activates on the field, which is very nice. Right, things like Evenly Matched doesn't work, things like Dark Ruler doesn't work because you can just chain any of your monsters that are in the back row and then chain Abyss target. So it's very nice for playing around some of these cards that aren't very interactive on your opponent's end. But the main cool thing about this is that since we used Scarred as material, we basically get to summon a regular Red Dragon Archfiend from the extra deck. So not only do we get the Abyss on field, we get another free level 8 body, which of course with our level 4 tuner on field will let us go into Centurion Legatia. We can use the effect to draw another card, and we can use the field spell that we searched a while back, discarding the card we just drew, put a Primera in the back row, and then end phase go for Legatia, getting Trudea. And of course from here we have the full Calamity Lock line as usual, as is standard in this deck. So it's slightly different than the Horus package, but it kind of accomplishes the same goal, where you're trying to put up some form of negation to protect your Calamity. And this deck has a lot of, as you can see here, like quick play spells or trap cards, to where if you have anything that's chainable to any of your opponent's board breakers, like Dark Ruler, Ultimate Slayer, even Forbidden Droplet, if you have anything that's chainable to any of those unrespondable board breakers, any trap cards or quick play spells, or even any of your monsters that are in your back row, because they're continuous quick effect traps. So any of those lets you use the Abyss to negate those board breakers. So it's just another alternate engine, and it's a lot less bricky of an engine than the Horus cards, right? Because Jet Synchron on its own isn't necessarily a brick, because you can discard it and then like bring it back later to go for some synchro play or like a link play. So I don't know. I think it's worth messing around with the Diabellstar stuff in this deck as well. Especially because, being able to go for this hot red line is like, it just puts up a bunch of big dudes. If you're trying to OTK, you can go for like Abyss plus Red Dragon Archfiend plus Legatia, and that's easily over 8,000 damage just in a single combo. And here's one more combo with the Diabellstar stuff, because I messed around with it for a little bit to try to find some alternate lines. So this time we're going to be using the field spell plus our Sinful Spoils. So the field spell, as you saw in the first combo, doesn't really get you to the, the main board you're trying to go for. So we're going to use the field spell, get Trudea effect, put Primera in the back row, special out the Primera. It's going to grab our quick play spell. This might be the first time we're actually going to use the quick play spell. So we can go for Diabellstar, use the Faith Centurion to put Trudea back in the spell trap zone, and then immediately send it away for our Snake Eye. We can draw a card off Sinful Spoils, right? Try to recover some of our advantage that we've been discarding. Immediately to discard it away with Jet Synchron and go for our Hot Red line. And of course, once we get our Hot Red on field, we can go for our Synchro 12 in order to get this effect to draw. But we can also use Faith Centurion's Graveyard effect. If you Synchro summon a Centurion monster while this card is in the graveyard, you can banish this card, put a Centurion monster from your graveyard in your spell trap zone. So what this is going to do is it's going to let us put back this Primera. And then during the end phase, we get to put the Legatia, also putting the Trudea in the back row. So now this, while at first we didn't have access to Calamity, now, thanks to the Diabellstar stuff, drawing the field spell plus Diabellstar engine puts up our negation as well as the Calamity lock. So it helps you kind of helps you clean up these messy hands where you don't really have a whole lot of gas, but then you get, you know, obviously full gas. So that about wraps it up for Centurion. The deck, it's pretty boring. It's pretty boring in its current iteration because the Synchro 12 pool is just not, it's just really not great at all, right? Like, I'll pull up the Synchro 12s. There isn't a whole lot other than just a bunch of degenerate cards, right? You know, technically you could go for like, oh, Final Sigma, wow. You know, you could go for, you know, Battle Wasp, wow. You can see that the Synchro 12 pool is just so small right now that, like, basically, the best thing to be doing in this deck is just Calamity Lock. Because there really isn't a whole lot else going on. Now, theoretically, you also have the Synchro 8 pool at your disposal, right? Because if you go for Primera and Trudea, technically you can keep Trudea as a level 4 and go for a Synchro 8. So some people go for things like Zorua, which is skill drain for a specific monster type, or specific extra deck monster type, I should say. The thing is, why would you ever do that instead of just saying your opponent can't play the game? You know what I mean? Like, why lock them out of one extra deck type when you can lock them out of everything? So, yeah, I don't know. I think if Calamity doesn't get banned, which, you know, we're probably not going to be getting a ban list until maybe 1 or 2 months after Centurion comes out. So, if you play against Centurion, you should just immediately be expecting the Calamity. I'm hoping some of the new support that they get in the future can kind of mix things up a bit, but for now, it's just Calamity Turbo. And if Calamity gets banned, you can expect Red Supernova Dragon Turbo as well. Because you can go Crimson Dragon into Red Supernova, so it's like the opposite of Calamity, where instead of stopping your opponent from playing, you can let your opponent play and then just banish everything that they play. So it's like inverse Calamity. But other than that, you know, you can play this deck with like the Diabellstar stuff like I showed you. You can play it with the Horus cards. You know, you can play this little Resonator engine, which has been gaining a little bit of popularity recently in these Horus style decks. You know, maybe mess around with like some Bestials, maybe mess around with things like, you know, some of the Red Dragon Archfiend cards with like Red Zone, you know, being able to bring back Supernova every turn. I don't know. The deck does have alternate plays. It's just, why would you ever do them instead of doing this?